Okay, good afternoon and good evening, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, and welcome once again to Tekedia Live. Today we'll be having a conversation on business growth, looking at how supply chain improves that efficiency and the utilization of factors of production, making it easier for us to move things from one place to the other. So today we have our faculty. He's actually a very amazing legend in this space, and I do believe vividly that after this section, you have a deeper insight and perspective about what is necessary to make sure that your lean supply chain framework can actually be optimized to help you drive growth in your company. So without wasting our time, I want to welcome Mr. Noshiri Chibueze, speaking from Belgium today. Welcome, faculty. Tekedia Live.
Thank you, Prof. And hello, everyone. First, I would like to start by asking you just few questions and just think about it as we go through. As we are looking through business growth and lean supply chain, I would like to ask you, why does business exist? Does business exist to make profit? Does business exist so that the person who started the business will be a boss and not report to anyone? Does business exist just to support some kind of advocacy? Or does a business exist to provide the means of livelihood for the community or for the family? While all these might be good reasons to start a business, I would like you to give me some time in the next couple of over the next hour to give you another perspective. My name is Noshiri Chibueze, and over the past 15 years, I've had the opportunity of working for global businesses across multiple functions, from software development, industrial engineering, finance, project management. And I usually make jokes that I grew up in the field of logistics and supply chain career-wise. And I'll be taking you through this business growth and lean supply chain. If you have any questions, I will encourage you to please write it down such that at the end, you will not forget it, and I'm more than willing to respond. So this session is broken down into three parts. First, we'll look at the real purpose of business. And the second part, we look at supply chain management concept. And thirdly, we look at lean principle in supply chain. And the reason we are doing this is because we know that supply chain has a cascading impact on almost all aspects of business, from manufacturing to trade to services and whatnot. Therefore, improvement on all these supply chain linkages is very vital for any business growth. And to make the improvement on the supply chain side, that is where lean comes in. Therefore, the objective of this session is to help you to gain some level of exposure and understanding on the lean concept, its principle, and also supply chain. Then we'll explore ways that we can apply the lean principles in a supply chain environment to improve efficiency for business growth. So, the real purpose of business. I would like to start with Peter Drucker. Peter Drucker is of the opinion that business enterprises are organs of society. They do not exist for their own sake, but to fulfill specific social purpose and to satisfy specific need of a society, a community, or an individual or individuals. Therefore, in what we're discussing today about business growth, we're talking about business, but what is business growth? Business growth is actually a stage where a business gets to, and all what they want to do is to expand, right? And to do that, they usually seek additional options to generate more profit. And sometimes the expansion is not even looking at profit. If we look at a company like Amazon, Amazon's expansion has been to gain market share over the past couple of decades, even though they were not chunking out profit for their shareholders. So that is also considered business growth. If we look at Apple, their business growth is piling up cash in terms of profit. So it's a function of business life cycle, industry growth trend, and also the owner's ambition for equity value creation. So I am of the opinion that businesses exist not just to make profit, but businesses exist to create and exchange value. And businesses also exist to create customers. And when the customers are created, what basically happens is that customers find value in whatever product or services that you're offering in the marketplace. And when they find it valuable and they are willing to spend their money to pay for it, that means they will exchange their money, which is value, for whatever product or services that is also of value that you're selling. And in this case, this is actually described as value exchange. And it's usually a win-win situation. The customer goes home happy, and you, the guy who set up business to create value, in the end, you get rewarded with money. So first, I will look at on this section 6 business growth strategies. And we know like every business is like planting a corn. You plant the corn, and then if the soil is fertile, if the environment is good, if there is sun, it begins to germinate. You have to water it, you have to remove the weed, you have to put fertilizer at the right time until it grows. So the first thing about business is that you have to look at market penetration. And market penetration is all about new product. So you're creating a new product that nobody knows or no one is using, but you believe that is going to solve a particular business need, a particular market friction. So you have to penetrate the market. And there are multiple ways of penetrating the market, but that's not what we are looking now. The second thing is market development. So let's say you have a product that is already working in Lagos or in Nairobi, and now you want to take it to South Africa, right? Now you are looking at new customers, new market. So you have to do a market development. However, you might already be in a market, but you're looking for different channels to reach new customers, because it's all about creating customers. It's all about creating values. So in that case, you have to look at alternative channels, and channels of reaching customers can be advertisement on television or on Instagram or on billboard, but depending on what you're selling and your target group, that will determine the channel that you might be considering, right? If we look at channels, for example, the 3 top channels today, you can things like email marketing or social media or business website or TV ads or billboards, whatnot. Then the next strategy in business growth is also to look at product expansion. So what basically happens on product expansion is that new features are added to an existing product that customers already know and use, hoping that all those products will solve some kind of problem for the customers. And I'll give you an example. If I look at the very first time I saw a mobile phone back in 2001 in my university days in Jos, and a mobile phone of today is the same mobile phone, is mobile. You can take it from point A to point B without wires, but the features has expanded tremendously. They keep on adding. First, they added radio to it, and they added camera to it. I remember the first time a friend of ours brought a phone, Sony Ericsson, and he has a camera phone. So they keep on adding features, and this is about product expansion. So you expand the features on an existing product to be able to gain more customer appeal and then conversion. Then the next strategy to look at is also market segmentation. So market segmentation is all about looking at the people you're trying to sell to and segmenting them to make sure that your message reaches the target audience. So just imagine if you're a travel agency and you're selling pilgrimage. You're selling pilgrimage package for Muslims to go to Saudi Arabia and for Christians to go to Israel, for example. Will you be let's say you operate in a place like Nigeria, where you have in the north predominantly Muslims and in the south predominantly Christians. So that means it makes sense for you to segment your message, your target market, so that in Sokoto and Kano, you put your advertisement about the package you have for pilgrimage to Saudi Arabia. And when you go to a place like Enugu, you advertise the same thing, but the package you have to go to Israel, right? Because that is the audience that you're talking to. You have to make sure you structure the message for the right audience. Then we look at also partnership. Partnership is also very important, because we know in life, nothing good can be achieved by one person alone. It's always a team effort. So partnership is one thing that can help your business to go from, I would say, a lone wolf to a good team that plays very well and scores very well. And in the field of product creation and service creation, partnership can help you to penetrate new markets, gain new customers quicker than you can do it on your own. And if you think about, let's say, if you have a product that you need to move from one country of production to a foreign country, right? Moving freight between countries means dealing with a lot of multiple, let's say, government and cultural and language. You might even have to get into some custom issues and the rest of those. So having a partner on the other side who understand the business landscape, who understand the sensitivity of the market and the customer behavior can actually be a good help with regards to your business growth strategy. Then on the right hand side, we actually look at what happened in every business. So every business you see does not operate in isolation. And if you know about Michael Porter, who is a Harvard professor, put together these Porter 5 forces, which I like very much. And what Porter is saying is that in every business, whether profit or non-profit, you will always have these forces operating in that market. The first one is that so far as the business is going well, there will be threat of new people who want to enter the business and compete with you. The only thing that can stop them from entering is if there is barriers, and those barriers can be financial barrier or legislative barrier or some kind of government taxes or whatever that can stop them. So for example, if you want to go into cement manufacturing business in Nigeria today, the barrier there is that you need to, first of all, maybe build your own power plant like the Dangotes and Buas, and then cough out billions and billions to buy machinery, right? So that's actually barrier of new entrants into cement manufacturing business in Nigeria. Then you look at also you can have bargaining power of supplier. So bargaining power of supplier is like, let me say the case of Russia and Western Europe. So Russia as a country supply gas to Western Europe, and this gas is actually what basically Western Europe use, especially during the winter time, to heat up all the houses. And that's why you saw sometime in the past when there was a problem in Georgia, Russia chose to switch off the gas. So that is actually a supplier power. So if you're the sole supplier of a particular product that is of value to people, you actually have real market power. And that's why you see in recent time with Dangote Refinery, we heard on the news that NNPC was going to buy 20% just to make sure that one man doesn't have the full control of a market of 200 million people. That means he can afford to flip the tap whenever he wants. And the consequences may be huge for whichever government that will be in power at the time. So we also look at the power of customers. So in some businesses also, you as the provider of business value, you actually don't have the market power. In some businesses, it's the customers that have the power. And customers have the power in a place where there is, I would say, a lot of competition. So when customer can flip from Mr. A to Mr. B to Mr. C to buy, then the customers in most cases have the customer power. If you're selling Gary, for example, in an open market in Nigeria, the customer asks you, how much are you selling? If the price is not good, he will switch to the next person, right? So in that case, it's a customer market. Then we also look at competitive rivalry, because as I said, no business operates in isolation. There is definitely one person who says that guy is making some profit, let me go and join him there, even if you're a blogger, you know. So there's always rivalry between people who are already in that business space, and that competition can be fierce. Then we also look at threat of substitute. So let's say your product is Coca-Cola. If you choose to increase price just to grow your business and make profit, your customers can switch from your Coca-Cola to 7-Up. After all, they are all sugar drinks, right? So when you understand this about your business and also understand this, then it helps you to know the environment you're playing. And this is true for every kind of business. Even if you're a law firm, you always have people who want to open a law firm. You always have customers who can choose to come to you or to go to the next guy, right? Then, but when we look at in the business environment where we are producing like products and services, we know that all those products has to go from point A to point B. And that movement already is the supply chain part. And we know the whole essence of business, you have to make profit, you have to make revenue, and that revenue has to take care of your cost. And the goal is that your revenue should be more than your cost so I can have profit. And for you to be able to push your cost down, you need to optimize your end-to-end supply chain. With that said, I will be going to the next thing here, which is before you get into supply chain, we talked about lean because I say we are going to infuse lean in supply chain. To understand what lean is, if you're hearing that word for the first time, so I would like to take a few time just to explain to you the origin and principles of lean. So lean is actually a term that was coined out by John Kraftsik in 98 when he was trying to explain, how do I say it, the Toyota production system as an alternative to the mass production system that was going on in the US car manufacturing industry. Later in 1990, three other guys, Womack, Jones, and Ross, also used the same word in their publication, The Machine That Changed the World. And I think that was at the point where that word actually caught fire, and there was lean marketing, lean production, lean finance, lean everything. And in their publication, they used this also to describe the working philosophy and practice of Toyota production system. Because what happened was that I think in 2008, Toyota Corolla became the world's largest car product sold. And the question is that how come a country like Japan that were just coming out of the ashes of World War II, all of a sudden we are able to catch up with the Germans and the Americans who have been making these cars all these years? So that was why a lot of researchers piqued interest in what was happening in Japan. So within the Toyota production system environment, the lean principle focus on things like Jidoka, just in time, Kaizen. And the whole aim of this is to be able to identify and eliminate waste to ensure that all the value creating steps will occur in a tight sequence. So to achieve cost leadership and high quality of service, lean methodology was actually used across other industries. As I said, in finance, in law, in IT, there's also lean software development, lean everything. And the whole essence is that in every business you're doing, there is inherent inefficiencies, and lean methodology actually helps you to identify those inefficiencies, which we consider as waste, and then take the necessary steps to eliminate those waste such that all the value adding activities will occur in a tight sequence. So lean itself should be viewed as a value leadership strategy. So if you want to create value for your customers in the market space where you're operating, lean is a very good, I would say, methodology to think about and to explore. And lean thinking, if you get into this way of thinking, lean thinking actually enables businesses to simultaneously improve their productivity, the quality of the product they're offering you, the services, and at the end, save costs. So lean actually has 5 principles, which says the first time you need to identify what adds value and what doesn't add value. As a matter of fact, it's broken into 3. You have what adds value, what doesn't add value, and what is necessary and doesn't add value. So if you're shipping, let's say, a product from Nigeria to the US, you are required to fill some custom documentation. All those things does not add value. However, it is necessary, right? So all those things you have to do. But if there's any other processes you're doing, which in the end doesn't result to value for the customer, you need to identify those and eliminate. When you identify what add value, you'll be able to create a value stream by eliminating the non-value adding activities. When that happens, you create a flow. And what happens that when you create a flow is that it helps for you to establish a pool. To understand what establishing a pool means, the alternative of a pool is a push. So in a manufacturing environment, a pull system is a system where where you produce on the customer's signal. Whereas a push system is a system where you produce and wait for the customers to come. The challenge of that is as soon as you produce, you have to store it somewhere, you start to incur costs, and sometimes what you see is that your product might become obsolete. So The next thing after you establish a pool is we get to the level of perfection, because it's all about this continuous improvement. Then Lean also identify 8 different types of waste. And the first one in this case is defect. So if you are in the business of manufacturing, I don't know, tissue papers, for every 1,000 tissue papers you manufacture, how many of them become out of spec, right? You need to make sure you reduce that, because when it becomes out of spec, means you cannot sell it and some money is going down the drain. You also have to look at overproduction. This one is very true in a lot of places. And I remember my previous thing with software development, I used to tell my team, just deliver the minimum viable product first and let's develop the next thing that the customer wants, right? So overproduction is also a type of waste. Another one is also waiting. Just imagine if you're working in a production environment or in a supply chain warehouse environment, and out of 8 hours work hour of the day, then you have to wait for 2 hours. I mean, all those time wasted adds no value to the process. Then unused potential is also a waste. If you in your environment, in your business environment, you have people who have the capacity and capability to do more, and you are not utilizing all those human resource, then they are just waste. Then we also look at transportation. You have to make sure any movement from point A to point B has to be necessary. Otherwise, the cost you're paying for that transportation is also waste. The same goes to inventory, which has to do with the stocks you store in a particular location. All those storages, if you're storing product that you end up not selling, it will become obsolete. You might have to scrap it, it's waste. While you're storing it, if nobody's buying it, you're paying for the cost of storage, it is also waste. So you have to make sure you produce based on customer signal, and then the shelf life shouldn't be longer than necessary. The same goes for motion. So whatever you're doing, going from place to place, taking coffee breaks, I have nothing against those who smoke, but a lot of cigarette smoking break is also unnecessary motion that can also cost waste. And same goes for extra processing. So do what is required, when it's required, how it is required, and don't go doing beyond what the customer is not willing to pay for. So this also in Lean, we also have this concept of 5S in the Lean methodology, which is mostly about making sure, because Lean was developed in a production environment, right? Making sure everything is in its place, everything has a place, and there's a place for everything. So tools, machineries, has to be sorted, has to be set in order. You say have to shine it, have to standardize it, and sustain it. And what happens that if you go into, let's say, a car manufacturing environment, just imagine if everything is scattered everywhere, right? Then it's difficult. Then the time it takes to even couple one car might double. So that's why this is very important, especially in a manufacturing environment. Then another thing I like about Lean also is that it doesn't say just copy it and paste it elsewhere. It talks also about Gamba work. And usually what Gamba work does is that it gives you step-by-step approach you can take to be able to identify the value we talk about, and then try to map it and try to create flow. So it's saying, don't just get into a place and start chunking out solutions. You have to, first of all, observe the actual work process, because you need to understand. When you gain the knowledge on how this process works, then you have to find opportunities for improvement, right? And when you find the opportunity for improvement, then you engage with the key players, the Ronaldos and Messis of that team. You have to engage with the key players. And the goal is to convince them that I have seen that you do step 1, 2, 3, 4. What if you do step 1, 2, and 4? Because I think 3 doesn't add value. I can go from step 2 to step 3, and it will save you 1 minute, or it will save you 10 minutes. So you need to engage with them, convince them on this new way of doing things. And just to mention, I think when I talked about jidoka, it's just a Japanese word, but it basically means quick identification and elimination of waste. And then just in time, as we know, is all about producing what is required when it's required in the quantity that is required. And then Kaizen on its own talks about continuous improvement. So when you get the perfection, you continue again. Okay, so with that knowledge of lean, now let's look at supply chain concept. What is supply chain? Supply chain, the way I see it, is an integration of multiple organizations into one cohesive network. And that network is linked at different stages of the activities to produce value in form of product or services towards the customer for customer loyalty and for customer satisfaction. With that knowledge, now we now look at how do you manage this, which is the supply chain management. And supply chain management is a philosophy to understand how businesses create value in an interconnected world. We know that supply chain is complex because it entails coordination, storage, delivery of raw materials and finished product from point A to point B. And the speed to market is very important to make sure you maintain your customer loyalty and satisfaction. Diagrammatically, I try to put a very simplistic supply chain network where we are going from raw material you buy from a vendor to an intermediary that maybe adds value or transform it, and then to another level of the intermediary, another supplier, and then it gets into a manufacturing environment where it is fabricated into some components that could be sub-assembly, and then a final assembly, and then it goes out to a distribution center where it is stored. From there, it is broken down to smaller retailers or smaller storage locations before it gets to the customer. So if you look at all the journey from the beginning of this raw material to the finished product that's coming to the customer, this is actually a very simplistic diagrammatic representation of what a supply chain looks like. What is missing in this diagram is that there is also another leg, that whatever this customer has bought, he or she can still return it to the retailer where he or she bought it. For example, let's say if you buy a mobile phone with repair contract, right? And something happens, then you can return it back. So that's also a return logistics. Also, by the time this guy is taking delivery of the product, he has also transferred some fund. So there's also another level of transactions going on here, which means the benefit of a proper supply chain management. So the benefit of managing this from here to here and all the backwards flows of the information and money and material is that it's help you to reduce costs when it's properly managed. And when you reduce costs in your business, of course, you know what the impact is. You increase your profit margin. It also helps to ensure that products are available at those stages for the final customer. It increases your profitability, as I mentioned earlier. It also reduces cycle time, and you can have better collaboration with your partners, maintain competitive advantage in this case in the marketplace, and have better inventory control and management, and also improve information sharing between all these parties. Now we'll be looking at how do we now infuse everything we've talked about on the lean principles in a supply chain. Because you remember in the lean principles, we're talking about you need to identify value, you need to remove what doesn't add value, you need to create a value stream and the rest of those. So we're saying the main goal of lean is to create more value with less resources. And the resources could be human effort, equipment, machineries, space, whatever it is. And when you do that, what you see is that you simultaneously improve the productivity, the quality, the service you provide to your customers, and your customers are actually happier, and your profitability actually increases. So let's take a supply chain environment, for example. I already mentioned to identify value, you need to break it down, all the process you're doing end to end, into value added, which we call VA here, the things that are necessary but non-value added, like all the paperwork, documentation you have to fill, and then the non-value adding activities, which is actually waste, and all this you need to identify and eliminate. So if you have an inefficient layout of your work environment, you have a lot of waiting time, you have unnecessary and futile motion, or you have a lot of rework because you don't produce right at the first time, or you have excess inventory because you are pushing your product to the market instead of allowing the market to pull, or you have a lot of defects. So all these you need to identify at this stage. At the next stage, look at the value stream. So to be able to create a value stream, you need to do what we call process activity mapping. You need to say, okay, what do? I do step A, I do step B, who are the partners? We identify them, step C, like that. When you do that on a board, it helps you to understand where your inefficiencies lie. There are also other methodologies like supply chain response metrics. For example, in a customer care, you need to, for example, look at when a call comes in, how many minutes does it take for you to respond to your customers, right? Also, quality filter mapping is also another tool that you can use to do value stream mapping, demand application mapping, and fiscal structure mapping. So this is like in a warehouse environment, you have to look at how your warehouse is set up. Where does the trucks come into dock? How do you empty the truck? How do you do they put the acknowledgement, they put away into the shelves and all those kind of things. So, or even physical structure mapping of a work environment, or it could even be in a place where they are sewing clothes, right? The way you position your sewing machines, how people walk in, how people walk out, all these nitty-gritties actually ends up in ensuring that you work in a very safe and efficient environment. So we look at creating flow in a process. It's all about progressive task along the value chain. So you have to ensure that as soon as it starts, everything flows. There shouldn't be stoppages, there shouldn't be backflows. And to ensure that these things happen, you need to have things like standard operating procedures, such that when Mr. A is on sick leave or is on holiday, your business doesn't grind to a halt. Someone can pick it up from there and continue. If you have various equipment, you need to ensure that your equipment changeovers can be done fast. The same thing goes for, as we talk about proper work layout, that also helps you to create a flow. Establishing a pool in a process, we cannot overemphasize that, because what happens is that actually, I think a typical example is in the car manufacturing industry. You see that today, if you're ordering a car, you can't just walk into any garage and say, I want to buy that car and pick it. If you're buying it, then it's not a new car. Almost across the car manufacturing industry, every manufacturer now produce on customer signal. So customer will walk into the garage and demand what they want to buy, fill the form, choose the color, the leather seat, blah, blah, blah. You have to choose everything. And then they tell you it will be delivered in 3 months. And all those information you provided is what they send to the car manufacturer. And then they put it as an order that needs to be produced within 3 months. So what that has done is that it helps them not to just keep on chunking out products that nobody's buying, that will end up in 6 months' time become an old model. So the same also goes to ensuring that we reduce the number of inventory outstanding. So basically, what this metrics looks at is when you produce a product and put it on shelf, how many days does it stay there before it goes out to a customer? So that's the number of days inventory outstanding. The lower that number, the better for you, because you don't have to pay a lot for the storage, right? The lower the shelf life. So there has to be proper process documentation, and where possible, which is always recommended, you have to make to order. Make to order is actually making according to the customer signal, according to the customer order. And lastly, we look at also ensuring that you have no or minimal obsolete product, which is actually expired product, because when it expires, it becomes waste. When it becomes waste, you write it off on your financials, and then it affects your profitability. Now we look at seeking perfection. So seeking perfection, we basically look at the product and services. No matter what you're doing, there is always room for improvement. And that's one thing you need to have at the back of your mind. The reason why you should have that at the back of your mind is that there is someone who you are not seeing today who is aiming to enter into that market space where you're operating. And the only thing that can keep you ahead of the game is to ensure you have a quality product to serve the market. And that also goes to services. High quality service is always appreciated by customers, and they reward you with their money. Right inventory level is very good. because you can see here, I'm juggling between product and also service. So if you are making product, to have the right inventory level is good. It's also not good for you to, in the aim of trying to be lean, then you don't have inventory to serve your customers, right? In that case, you also be losing a lot of sales. And we know that a lot of businesses are operating with assets. Assets can be machineries or any kind of physical assets. You have to make sure that all these assets are optimally utilized. If you think about a transportation business, it makes no sense that you have a bus that runs from point A to point B carrying only 2 people when the capacity is 25. The same thing with truck. It makes no sense for you to have a truck you put on the road from point A to point B and it has only 5 pallets. Meanwhile, it can carry 25 pallets. So that asset is not optimally utilized. And that means that the unit cost of transporting each of those pallets is actually high. And with this kind of high cost, it's just a matter of time you'll be knocked out of the business. And when this happens, what you see is that there is increased customer satisfaction. And we know what happy customers can do. They can come and line up and sleep on the streets, like what we see when Apple is about to release a new phone. And in the end, what you get is reward in terms of cash from your customers. So when you do this, the reward is actually beneficial and also for your bottom line. So at this point, before I continue, I will take a pause in case anyone has any question. Then we will continue also to make sure it's as interactive as possible.
Thank you so much, faculty. It's always amazing listening to you. You know, I always actually forget that we need to get into question and answer. And I do also believe that our members, you have the same perspective when you listen to Mr. Noshiri. He's just an amazing legend when it comes to supply chain and logistics. So thank you so much for taking us through this excursion on understanding the mechanics of supply chain. Commerce is supply chain because it's all about moving factors of production. So thank you. So members, now is the time for question. If you have a question, please raise your hand up. What we'll do today is, I hope that he can also give us maybe extra 15 minutes. So just hoping that he will have time, because I expect many of us to have questions. So go ahead, Mr. Cornelius. Cornelius, unmute yourself.
Yeah, I'm here. Good evening.
Hello, good evening.
Oh, okay. My question basically is on the push and pull system. So I'm trying to get a hold of how that can work for me where I am now. Now, if I am to use the pull system where I wait for clients or customers to basically send orders before I respond to them, I might not meet up with some orders, and I believe it can affect my customer service and all, right? And then some of my competitors might use that as a competitive advantage. Now, if I am to use the push system, definitely I should have a good warehouse system, and that will be more cost, and eventually you might have waste and all. So is it possible to probably build a balance between these two so that you are basically cutting down costs and also not delaying with servicing your clients? Thank you.
Okay, many thanks, Cornelius. And the question you ask is very, very good. And the field of supply chain is always about tampering theoretical knowledge with business practicalities, I would say, right? So your question about push and pull also depends on the product you're selling. So let me take, for example, if you're selling fresh tomatoes in Lagos and you're selling it in an open market, of course, customers, you don't have, let's say, a website where customers are ordering your fresh basket of tomatoes, then it becomes difficult for you to even know what the customer wants, right? For you to be able to be flowing through the pull strategy. However, prior activity data can tell you that during Easter time, right, you sell double of the volume you used to sell in the past. So you can leverage on data to be able to ensure that even if you're doing push, you don't push more than what your customers require. And that's also because if you push so much and you don't sell your perishable goods, you end up losing your profit. However, if you're a block industry and you are doing a pull strategy and you're saying, because I'm doing a pull strategy, customers can come ad hoc and say, I need 1,000 9-inch block and I don't have it, so I lose that business. Of course, we know bricks are not perishable goods. So in that case, you can also look at data or look at some signal in your location. If you see there's a new estate where buildings are springing up, right? You can actually, I would like to say, take the risk to push more into the market. However, it's also advisable for you to step out, reach out to your customers, and be able to identify what they want in advance. So it's always a balancing act depending on the business or the product you're delivering to the marketplace to decide the pull or the push strategy, what to use at each point in time. Cornelius?
Yeah, I'm here with you, sir. Okay. So it's if I got you right, so it's not like I should just go for one. I should probably use data to align both together in my process.
That is true, and also every business is unique and different, right? So the advice I'm going to give to the person who is making bricks is not the advice I'm going to give to the person who is selling onions.
Okay, I get
right
it now.
Yeah, so if I tell the man who is making, let's say, interlocking tiles in Abuja to do a push strategy, even though nobody buys his interlocking tiles, it will still be lying down there, come rain, come sun, until someone buys it. If you tell the same person who is selling onions to use a push strategy, he will push his onions, nobody buys it, and they will all perish. And then he will lose all his money, right? So it depends, because in this case, I don't know the particularity of the product or services you're offering to the market. So maybe we can connect afterwards and you can explain to me in details if you need my, I would say, advice in this case.
Okay, that would be fine. That would be fine. Okay. Thank you so much, sir.
Many thanks.
Yeah, thank you. And just in addition to what our faculty said here, I think if you do keep your data up to date, you can actually from that data extrapolate, not in months, but possibly in weeks, how the market system can actually work for that particular company. So let's say today 20 people came, and yesterday 20 people came, or 21, and you just saw, okay, average of 20, 15, 30. You can have an average. Then over time, you begin to see what the size, so that you can get into that equilibrium between supply and demand. It's not physics, but it's something that your data should guide you, just like a faculty noted, over time. Thank you.
Yes.
So let's go to next question. Kabir, please, Kabir. Unmute yourself.
Hi, good evening, Prof. Good evening, faculty. My name is Abdulaziz Kabir. I'm the founder of Farm 365. What we do in my company is that we help rural farmers sell their vegetables directly to businesses in the urban areas. Some of our customers are Kilimanjaro, Chicken Republic, and the Place Restaurant. So, sir, this is an insightful, I think, presentation, a wonderful one, because you are talking to us directly, because we are working on supply chain from farm to our warehouse, then to our customers. So we have these partners in the names of Cold Hub. We use their infrastructure, which is a solar cool room, to preserve our vegetables, which are tomato, pepper, cabbage, carrot, and cucumber. So over time, sir, we used to keep more than the demand, and we observe that we are running at last. So we'll now say, okay, fine, let's look at the demand, let's look at the data of what the customers is to order from us. So we can only keep what customers order in that cool room for like 1 or 2 days, until then we now get to the book to know that yes, we are getting profit. So, sir, like in the case of Lagos, we want to start this business in Lagos to supply Chicken Republic and other customers there. But sir, transportation and the road and the storage facility has been like a headache to us. Now, so we just postponed it, sir. So, sir, what advice can you give us, sir, in case of starting this business in Lagos? In as much as our customers, it's not an open market. These customers are target customers. We have segmented the market. These customers are customers that need quality and premium product, which are the likes of Chicken Republic, the Place Restaurant, and the rest. So, sir, what advice can you give us in order to smooth this supply chain to Lagos and other parts of the country? Thank you.
Okay, many thanks, Kabir. First, I will start with your cold storage, right? I was about taking that, but I think you're already doing the right thing to ensure that your perishable products are actually, I'm sure, transported in a temperature sensitive packaging or like temperature sensitive boxes and then stored in an ambient temperature or whatever temperature condition that is required for those. The first thing I wanted to say is on that part, even without going to Lagos, in the market where you're operating now, have you explored new markets? So if you're looking at the Chicken Republics and Mr. Biggs and the rest of those they are not the only ones eating chicken in that vicinity or in that state. So I will encourage you to explore new markets. That's the first one. Then looking at, let me say, the B2B where you are operating in Lagos, with regards to transportation, which I know is a huge cost, there are a lot of things to explore. So are you looking at transporting them by air because you want them to get there on time, right, and fresh? Or are you transporting them by road? Or I also know that there's rail now, for example, Kaduna, Abuja, and somewhere from Kogi all the way to, I don't know, Delta. So there could be different modes of transportation for you to consider. And the most important thing is, for me, the storage of the product, because in this case, the cheapest form of transportation now, I think, is actually the rail. But unfortunately, maybe the rail, you might not have a rail line from wherever you are down to Lagos straight. So you might want to consider by road. By road, if you're putting perishable products on road, I think you have to make sure you transport them in a temperature sensitive boxes, which I don't know if those are available to you. If they're available to you, that might be the best form of transporting it at the least cost, in a case where you don't have a direct rail network from where you are into Lagos. The next thing to also explore is that you might not be the one to pay for the transportation. You can also have, like, I think last time we talked about Incoterms. You can also have a situation where these customers in Lagos buy it from you and arrange the transportation themselves. Maybe they are also buying other products from, let's say you are in Kaduna. Maybe they're also buying other products from Kaduna, right? Or maybe flour or wheat or millet or whatever. And they already have their own means of transporting these things down to Lagos. So you can also ask them, can I provide you this at this price? And you pick it up from my place, like what you have in Free Carrier or Xworks, as it's called in Incoterm. So those are different things different levers you can pull. And yes, I think that's what I would do if I were in your shoes at this point.
Okay. Thank you, faculty. And let me also note here, Mr. Kabir, in the board, we actually have the full part of this lecture. So you have fleet management, you have supply chain, you have logistics. I understand that maybe because of time, everyone is pursuing one thing or the other. You've not made time to actually check through it. So go back to the board. You have a full lecture there on fleet management and optimization. But when you go through it, I do believe vividly that you get a deeper insight. So a faculty there provided insight on consumer products, point-to-point, hub and spoke, hub management, and extremely brilliant insight. So also, hopefully within next month, we will ask him to come back specifically on supply chain and logistics, because it seems that's where most of the questions are coming. So we'll seek his thing for him to come and also provide perspective on that. So let's go to the next question. Joseph, okay, sorry. Patrick, please. Patrick or Diego, you're the first.
Yeah. Thank you so very much, Prof. Thank you, faculty. Am I audible?
Yes, please.
Yes,
you are. Go ahead.
Oh, beautiful. Faculty, I recently received a contract for supply of about 100,000 metric ton of raw material to China. The customer wanted to use Incoterm CRF, but I looked at it and I think it's best to have CIF so that all the passage are still retain ownership because of the dislocation in China. When you send, they use their state inspection company, which is in most cases trying to work to the advantage of the Chinese customers. But in their contract, I equally insisted that we should use SGS both here in Nigeria and in China for destination inspection. Now, my biggest challenge actually is on the logistic aspect. 100,000 metric ton, and the quality in question is something that we can produce. but I've been trying to really keep my eyes open on systems that will help in providing us seamless logistics system. Sea-Link is coming up with this inland waterway, which hasn't yet been launched, but they are hoping to set it up and running hopefully from next week. And there's other companies that can do trucking, but because of the huge volume, it will be almost like a nightmare to actually keep control. I don't know what you can suggest. I've heard you mention the train, and the train from our site is about 40 kilometer or thereabout, where there is a train station. So if we need to track it to, or rather use truck to truck it to that train station and then put, the earliest we can go is to go to Port Harcourt. And at Port Harcourt, we still have a challenge to go to One. So it's something that I don't know what you can suggest on this interim situation. It's going to
So
be another
Yes.
faculty,
challenge,
Okay.
though.
No, it's fine.
faculty.
It's fine. Go ahead, Prof. Then I will answer to
No,
him.
I'm just saying that this is Nigerian problem, African problem. And Patrick wants you to solve it. Over to you now.
No. Well. Having been with the likes of DHL and UPS and now Barry Calabout, all in the field of supply chain, I've heard and seen different things. I'll give you an example. During last year, COVID cases. Normally, when we ship chocolate to everywhere in the world. So because of the COVID situation, the ports were closed and airlines were also down. So we had to start shipping chocolates in containers from Duisburg in Germany to China using the Trans-Siberian Rail. So the train will go all the way Germany, Berlin, north of Poland until it gets to Russia. The whole Russia drive it until it gets to Kyrgyzstan, all those Uzbekistan, stand until China, right? So all these things are possible. The only thing is that the cost is higher, but if you're willing to take your product from point A to point B, you just have to do it with the constraints you have in the market. So I wrote down some things. First of all, I will encourage you to explore the multimodal transport. If you can take a truck to take it from your location, you say it's 40 kilometers to the rail. The next question is that the rail that is operating now, do they have space for carriages to carry your product? If yes, maybe explore what the cost will be to where the rail ends, because I know the rail network is not complete, and then the cost of trucking it from there to on a port or whatever. That's one thing you need to explore. And Excel, I will tell you, is your friend. Rows and columns, you put the numbers, and I mean, you will know what's right for you to do. And since you're talking about raw materials, which means is heavyweight, one thing I will advise you is that make sure you ship them in 20-foot containers, because 20-foot container and 40-foot container have almost the same weight range. So if you're shipping heavy equipment, heavy goods, it makes sense to put it in. Okay, let's say the weight range is 35 metric ton. If you put in 20 metric ton, no matter what you put there, it should be 35 metric ton. If you put in 40 metric ton, it should be 35 metric ton. So that means whenever you use two 20-foot container, you are actually achieving 70 metric ton. Whereas if you put in 40-foot container, you still have just 35. So, and these are things that sometimes people who are shipping don't understand. Someone might be buying things like, let me say, light product like clothes, right? And they will use two separate 20-foot containers instead of just putting it in one 40-foot container and paying a lower cost. So for sure, I will tell you, for heavy raw materials, high density, 20-foot containers is the recommended approach. Second thing, explore multimodal transport between your road and the rail. And thirdly, and lastly, the question you asked about the Incoterm. No Incoterm is right or wrong. Every Incoterm has advantages, has risk, but the most important thing about Incoterm is to define ownership of risk and also ownership of the product itself. So I don't know if the Chinese partners you're dealing with, if you have dealt with them in the past, because there are even some other challenges, things like letter of credit, things like which bank are you using, China Import-Export Bank. So there are other factors that you need to consider in this whole thing. But there is no one size fit all. And in the future, I would expect that you might also consider to have your own fleet, even if it's 1 or 2 trucks, right? Because that will help you in the Nigerian logistics landscape to be able to mitigate some of these kind of challenges.
Yeah, thank you, faculty. Just for our members here, I know most of us have not made time for the call. Even all these terminologies you are hearing here, like Incoterms, go back to our course. All of them are there. And I think we also uploaded the course. So the distribution strategy and channels, just because of time, our faculty cannot run through all, but hopefully we can come back just to focus on the logistics part. But we already have all these contexts right in the board. Okay. So so faculty, please, I will actually step out in 4 minutes.
Okay.
But you will continue. So I'll make you the host. You will continue, and maybe the next 15 minutes. So just make
that should be fine. No, that should be fine. That should be fine. Yes.
Thank you. Okay. So next question, please. Go ahead, Mr. Joseph. Thank you. Joseph, please unmute yourself.
Good evening, sir. Good
Yeah.
evening,
Hello.
Good evening, faculty.
Okay. Good evening.
Good evening.
So can you hear me, please?
Yes, I do.
Okay. Actually, I want to pour out my mind. It's nice joining this course. And from my challenges in the holding sector, in which our company was just registered last year, and we are able to go into college last year. But the challenges I've been having, and which I've also been having with some other companies we've partnered with in the holding sector, is pricing. Actually, last year we were able to get a contract to move some containers from the port to Casina. So, but it comes to particular, we don't have truck, but we network with truckers, and when trucks are available, we give it out to the loaders, people that have loads to carry. So that is what we do. We serve as a third party to people that want to carry loads. So, but the challenge was that most time we normally have issue with pricing. Yes, when pricing will have the actual pricing from the port or from the load, from the company carrying the load. So it will weigh down the trucker. And that is one of the major challenges they have been having in the haulage sector in Nigeria, because most times there is a particular company we partner with that do take feedback from us to know our feelings about the services I think they are providing, because it's a platform we use. So, but this challenge keep on moving to the extent that it came to a particular time was so pissed off. Most times we have spent a lot of money to network with truckers, and at the same time we have networked with loaders. But when it now comes to bargaining or trying to negotiation, when it now comes to negotiation, we find it so difficult to convince the truckers and also to convince the load owners. So I think there should be something we are missing, or maybe there are still some other company we have not networked with that really have trucks that can go on with the load owners' price. So I just need your assistance on that, sir.
Okay, so if I understand correctly, you are actually the middleman that brings that brings the man who needs the service of a truck and the guy who owns the truck together, right? And you're saying that when you bring them together, the deal mostly falls apart because of pricing, because of not agreeing on the right price. Okay, so to ensure you don't waste all that time, let me tell you what the big global logistics and supply chain providers do. They have rate cards. Rate cards are defined from zip code to zip code. So if you go to a DHL office in Lagos or UPS office in Bagada and say, I want to send this package from Nigeria to Germany, you see that the guy will take it from you, put it on top of like a weighing scale, and tell you how much it's going to be. So what happens is that they have developed a pricing system which looks at, is actually called dim weight, dimension and weight. So in dim weight, you look at the dimension, which is length and width and breadth of what you're shipping, and you also check the weight, which means if you're using a 20 kilogram box, just imagine a 20 kilogram container or box. If you're using a 20 kilogram box to put cotton, the white cotton, is going to take a space of 20 kilogram, but the weight might be 2 kilograms, right? So in that case, the dimension is bigger than the weight. If you also use a 5 kilogram box to put what do I say, stones or gold, right? That means in that case, the dimension is just length and width and breadth of a 5 kilogram box, but the weight is actually higher. So in this case, from pricing, there's something called dim weight, dimension weight. So what they usually do is that they take the higher of both. So you have a price based on weight and you have a price based on the dimension. And if you build this kind of pricing tool, it helps you, and it also helps you to educate both the buyer and the seller, right? Because you need to be able to go back to something. Because if you have that pricing tool, when someone is coming and say, please, if you're what are you shipping? What's the dimension? You're shipping from Lagos to Enugu. If it's this dimension and this weight, the charge should be this. And you have to make sure you also sell the same to the guy with the truck. And until you can have, because for me, this is a more commercial discussion, but you should have a system, and that system has to be calibrated between the buyer and the seller, right? But until you can develop that system, I'm just giving you an idea of dim weight. If you can develop that system, that is one thing that will help you to be able to have a rate that is appealing to the guy who is going to do the transportation. And you also have to make sure you build in some adjustment factors, because I know how Nigeria is. Maybe if the price of diesel goes up, the guy with the truck will say my price is going up. Yeah, right. So you have to make sure also your rate matrix also has some other adjustment factors that takes into account other macro indices, I would say. Thanks. Okay, good. So okay, you're welcome. I will go from my screen. The person I'm seeing, Joseph Olasoji.
Okay, sir. But yes, I'm the one. So I don't know if we can also have your contact. If we can have your contact, or a way of networking. I mean, connecting with you for further explanation and questions.
Well, Joseph, I have no problem. As I put here on my screen, you can reach out to me on LinkedIn. That's fine. I'm more than willing to support you in any way I can. But just, you also have to remember, I'm also busy with my normal work. But for sure, if you send me an email, I will respond to you at my earliest possible time. Okay.
Okay.
Okay, but you can reach me on LinkedIn. Just look for Noshiri Chibueze on LinkedIn, and that should be fine. Many thanks. Okay. Yes. Then I will move to Roland Ugu. I see your hand is up.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. Good day for those outside Nigeria. My name is Roland. I work in the FMCG sector. I work for an FMCG manufacturer. So I don't know. Am I audible enough?
Yes, I hear you perfectly.
Okay. So recently I have some challenges which I've been trying to trash out with my the CS and logistics team, customer service and logistics team. And this is the scenario. In terms of our product offering to our customers, we have both high value products that are premium priced, and then we also have low end values, low end valued products that are not premium priced. Okay, so recently there was this kind of policy that came out, which I know is geared towards cost and revenue optimization, saying, okay, that for upcountry locations here in Nigeria, any order, for example, that is not up to 22 pallets cannot be shipped. So we have this situation whereby, for instance, someone may be moving from point A to B at, let's assume like a 600 kilometer apart. Someone just buys maybe a product value of, let's say 6 million, and it's 22 pallets, and the CS&L guys will willingly ship out. We also have cases whereby customers maybe raise an order of maybe 18 pallets, for example, but valued at about 11 million. And we still have these issues dragging around, is up to 22 pallets and all that. I know, like you said, you're trying to manage the cost per unit, but I'm worried. I would like to understand if there is no relationship between these two. I have an order that I'm generating 11 million from, and I have another one that I'm generating 6 million from, but you're also in 16 that I must have to complete it to 22 pallets. I think you understand what I'm trying to say here. So I just need to get clarity on this.
Yes, perfectly, Roland. I understand perfectly what you're saying. The first question I have is that this is a clear case that usually addressed in any company using the SNOP. Do you have a sales and operations plan and meeting in your company?
Yes, we have that. Yes,
okay.
We have that.
Yeah, because what you see that happen in the company is that salespeople want to sell, and operations and supply chain has to make sure cost is optimized, right? And one of the ways to optimize cost is to make sure like asset utilization, as I mentioned earlier. So this kind of situation you just talked about, high value premium product and low value, and then the restriction on 22 metric ton. I also presently work in an FMCG, and we don't have this. However, we have some other kind of restrictions. But this kind of, for me, this is about decision making. And if I'm to run your business, I will actually look more on the financial value side instead of just the 22 metric ton. Because when these rules are just like only one metric, it becomes difficult. You need to be able to, as I said, tamper the theoretical things with the practical realities, right?
Yes.
Because at the end of the day, the whole essence of putting the rule of 22 metric ton truck is to ensure optimum asset utilization, to ensure that your cost per pallet is optimal. But at the same time, if you're doing that and you're losing sales of 18 million naira, then in the end, it's no longer worth it, right? So this is a kind of discussion where your vice president of sales has to sit down with your vice president of operations and supply chain, or director, whoever is in charge, and discuss these things out and be able to put such waivers. I will give you a typical example. We have a process where we said we do not ship our product by air for whatever reason. But sometimes you see a customer saying, I want this product, and we know that the customer has potential of turning into even a key account. So what do? We said, okay, there has to be a backdoor, and the backdoor is that it has to be approved by, let's say, the supply chain director and the customer care director and the finance director. Then in that case, it comes to me, and if the argument is strong, then I go ahead and say, let's do it. Because that's what business is all about. You can never get it right at all times. But I think it's wrong that you have the product to ship, you have a customer that wants to buy it, and you have 18 million on the line, and because of 18 metric ton. No, I think something needs to be done, and it's a decision that the senior business leaders in that company needs to, I would say, sit up to the occasion and address this in the weekly or weekly SNOP.
SNOP meetings. All right, thank you so much. Yeah.
Okay.
I actually told you line, but it's putting me, it's bringing this rift. People are trying to look at it. I'm coming from the angle where I want to put up my. But I understand. I'm looking at it from the financial value angle. Thank you so much. I know how to handle that. So thank you so much.
Yeah,
I just got an insight I needed.
No, that's true. And one more thing to tell you also, because another thing that happens is that your people in maybe customer care or supply chain also do not know the value of the product. So what happens is that the place where you keep your product, the people are not supposed to know what is premium high value and what is just normal product. And that's to guide against theft and all these kind of things. So sometimes the persons in, let's say, customer care or operations who are making decision of 22 pallets or nothing, right, don't actually know the financial side you're talking about. And that's where you need someone way above their salary scale to override them and say, okay, for this rule, we have exception for this case, right? And that's the only way you can make sure you cover both sides. Thanks.
All right. Thank you so much.
Okay, thanks. I see Okoronkwo Ebenezer, your hand is up.
Good evening, faculty.
Hello, good evening. Yes, I hear you.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Noshiri. Did I get a name?
Yes, Noshiri is the name. Noshiri is the name. Noshiri Chibueze.
Okay, Noshiri. Thank you very much. Yeah. Actually, I am into procurement. Which is actually a subset of supply chain. And I've been new in that place, but I have kind of desire to master the whole concept, or actually master supply chain, even go further professionally. So I want, what advice can you give me on how to actually improve myself more on probably on this procurement or the supply chain as a whole?
Okay, so Ebenezer, I will recommend, if you have the time and the resources, to maybe, because I don't know if you'll be willing to maybe go and take a course, a master's program in supply chain. There's also another shortcut, which is to take some certifications. There are at least one or two notable certifications I know about that can, in a short time, bring you up to speed with the inner workings of supply chain. Also, I can also feel free to connect me on LinkedIn. I will send you, I'll say, some links that can help you, right? Where you can find resources to read, or even maybe YouTube videos to watch. There are a lot of also channels that are focused on supply chain specifically. There's also a lot of other platforms like what we have here in Tekedia. But with regards to supply chain specifically, if you want to gain more in-depth knowledge, feel free to connect to me. I will recommend maybe a certification you can consider, or some other textbooks you can read that I believe can help you. Many thanks. So, do I still have anyone with a question before we close? I guess not. Okay, good. So the other thing I try to put here is that we are talking about supply chain and lean, right? And I put some examples here because sometimes they say a picture has 1,000 words. So in this picture, I try to show a typical warehouse environment, which is basically where you store products, right? And a warehouse environment is just a space. It's just a box. It's just like your airport or anywhere. And what happens in a space is that the vertical space is always limited.
Can you hear me, please? Your screen is not shared.
Oh, sorry.
Thanks.
Okay, good. Can everyone see my screen now?
Yes, thanks.
Yes.
Okay, good. Yes.
We can see.
Okay, good. Yes, we can. Okay, good. So I'm just trying to say, if you look at a warehouse, for example, as a component of supply chain, you see that the warehouse space, the length and the width on the ground is always finite, right? You are always buying 600, 1,000 square meter space, but going up is almost unlimited. You can build up in the sky. So what you see that's happening now is that a lot of warehouses also want to stay close to where the customers are, and the customers are concentrated in the city. So what you see is, instead of having warehouses like this, where everything is flat, a lot of spaces with the wrong type of machineries, and in a warehouse, you're paying the cost of the space, right, per square meter or per aisle position. The trend you see that's happening now is that no one is going with wide aisles because all these are empty spaces and they are waste, as we have already seen in the lean type of waste. Some people are at this stage where they are using middle aisles. Sorry, when they're using narrow aisles. And if you use narrow aisles, what you see is that you need a different type of machineries. For example, here the forklift does not needs to turn around almost like 360 to get out or to bring this product out. In the narrow aisle, you have a forklift that can go back and forth, but the fork itself that can bring the pallet out can go left and right. So that means that you can narrow your aisle and use this type of machineries. And usually the operator will be inside the fork and it can take all the way up to wherever your pallets are stored. So this, I would say, this is like a semi-optimized storage environment. And then if you look at a fully automated and optimized storage environment, is like what you have here. So this is a very narrow aisle, automated storage, no human intervention. You have like robots and monolight rails, like in this case provided by this company, that you basically give an instruction to this robot with a rail to say, go to, let's say this is aisle 5, shelf 2, layer 2A, and bring this pallet. You give the instruction and this bad boy goes in there and bring this out for you. So what happens is that you can actually build this kind of warehouse in the middle of Lagos, right? With all the density, because you don't need all that massive space. And then you can put all your pallets, all the way up, and you are able to use this to serve your customers in a concentrated place like Lagos or New York or Brussels or some other kind of places. But of course, we know with this kind of technology comes also at a cost. So it depends on what you're selling. So just to put a picture representation of what we are talking about in terms of lean and optimizing spaces and making sure you are very close to your customers to sell them and the rest of those. Then the next thing I also want to show is some of the interesting things that we are seeing now happening in the space. If you have ever been to the Apapa port or some other ports in the world, or maybe the Antwerp port here in Brussels or Rotterdam or elsewhere, this is what you see. You see a big body of water, a terminal where like a Maersk or the different people have their terminals, so that when their vessel comes, it will park there, and usually containers are brought down and placed like this. This is how this has been working for, I don't know, almost 100 years now, or since they invented containerization. Now, on the right-hand side, since last month, this has been built and tested in Jebel Ali Free Trade Terminal in Dubai. And it's first of its kind. So instead of just having all this line over here, they can actually now place these containers like you place in the warehouse. And this is huge because we know in a terminal like this, space comes at a premium. So imagine if you can build something like this in this space. The second advantage it has is that if you want to remove, let me say, the red container over here, you need to first of all remove the blue one before you can take the red one. Or if you want to take the green one down here, you have to remove 1, 2, 3, 4 containers on top of it before you take this one. So all this is just waste because it takes time, it takes energy. The guy has to operate 4 containers out before he reaches the next one. Whereas in this case, you can reach to any container in this space directly, which means it reduces that time you take to unload 3 to remove this and then rack it back. So going forward, this is one of the newest innovations we have seen in containerization racking at the terminals. So this is just one of its kind, the first one in Jebel Ali in Dubai. So far they have 11 tiers, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 11. And you can have 100% direct access to any of these containers you want to pick here in record time. And you can see how the trucks are coming. So let's say you bring your pick list, you give it to them based on that, and they are actually operated by semi-autonomous robots. And it goes, bring it out, put it on the truck, and the truck leaves. With this kind of solution, you don't have congestion, because another thing you see with ports like this everywhere in the world. If you go to Rotterdam, close to the port, you see congestion. If you go to in Antwerp in Belgium here, that's congestion. If you go to Nigeria, Apapa, Lagos, you see congestion. And that's because everybody has to be on the line waiting for one guy to remove, bring your own, put for you, and you go. With this, you don't have that congestion because you put on this guy, he goes. You put on this guy, he goes, right? And this first one now can hold up to 792 containers, which means the next one should maybe increase by 10 or 20% capacity. So, and it can actually reduce all these things by 3x. That's actually the beauty of it. So in the future, when you're building terminals or building ports, if it costs like 50 billion to build this port, to build this terminal in this port, with this kind of technology, maybe you just spend only 20 billion because you don't need all this space, right? And then you bring it out and rack all the containers. And this is all about waste reduction and even in terms of investment. Then the next one I'm looking at also is autonomous trucks. So we know, of course, we've heard a couple of times on the news and on television about Tesla autonomous vehicles, right? But on the truck and logistics sphere, these technologies have been used a couple of times in the US. At this point, they're using it on just the highway. So a human being would drive the truck and put it very close to a highway, and then a team will remotely operate the truck on the highway to the end of the highway, and then the human being picks it up again. But at least that saves a lot of time. And what you see is in today, of course, you need human being to do this for 95, 99% of all the trucks moving around today. In the future, when this technology becomes very mature and stable, you might not even have a need of this guy. So this guy sitting down here driving this truck becomes waste because there is an alternative solution to get the same job done. So just in a nutshell, I just want to bring you up to speed with some of the things that we see that are happening in the market, in the space. And I saw another news also where I think it was in Denmark, where they built a solar panel operated vessel. Because if you look at CO2 emission, apart from industries and cars, vessels like the heavy ships on the oceans are the ones who are emitting a lot of greenhouse gases. So just imagine if those vessels can be covered with solar panel, because they are most times under the radar of the sun, and they can convert those solar energy into the energy they need to power themselves. The amount of CO2 emission they can reduce and the amount of cost they can save in terms of fuel consumption. Okay, so that's about it for now. Does anyone still have any question before we close the session? Okay. In the absence of any question, I want to thank you for your time. And as I said earlier, feel free to reach out if you have any question, and in any way I can be of help, I'll be more than willing to support. And I wish you all the best on your journey at Tekedia. Thanks a lot and have a nice day.
Thank you very much.
All right, thanks.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you, faculty.
Okay,
Thank
thanks.
you.
Bye.
Thank you very much.
Good night, everyone.
Okay, good night. Bye.
Thank you, everyone. Good night.
Thank you, faculty. Chibuzo.
Thank you, everyone.
Yeah.
Good
Thank
night.
you, faculty.
Thank you,
Thank you,
everyone. Have a great
Thanks.
night rest.
Okay, you too.
Pleasure. Thank you. Can we have your slide?
Sorry, what do you say?
Can we have your slide emailed to us?
Yes, you can. Yes, you can have the slide. Prof has the slide. He can also share it.
It's on the board. It's on the board. The slides
yes,
are
you
on the
can have
board.
the slide. Okay, good. Many thanks. Cheers. Bye.
All right. Bye. Thanks.
Okay.
Bye.